Bruce Lee stands alone in the center of a private training hall in Oakland, California. The year is 1964. He's 24 years old, 5 feet 7 inches tall, weighing 135 pounds of coiled precision. His black hair is slicked back, still damp from the warmth of the afternoon. He wears simple black cotton pants and a fitted white t-shirt that reveals the dense musculature of his shoulders and arms. Every movement he makes, rolling his neck, flexing his fingers, carries the fluid economy of someone who has spent 10,000 hours eliminating wasted motion from their body. Around him, the wooden floor creaks with the weight of 15 witnesses. They've gathered at his invitation, though none of them knows exactly why they're here. The air smells of sweat and wood polish. Sunlight cuts through high windows, casting long rectangular pools of gold across the training mats. In the corner, a heavy bag hangs motionless, its leather surface worn smooth by countless impacts. Bruce had sent word 3 days earlier. Come to the school, bring no one else. Tell no one. Now they stand in a loose circle, these 15 men who represent the breadth of his world in America. Some are his students, dedicated practitioners who followed him from Seattle when he opened this school 6 months ago. Others are local martial artists, men from different styles who've heard the rumors about this young Chinese instructor who moves like water and strikes like lightning. One is a journalist. 2 are businessmen who've become friends. Another is a university professor who studies philosophy and finds Bruce's theories about combat fascinating. They shift their weight. They glance at each other. They wait. Bruce had been in America for 5 years now. 5 years since leaving Hong Kong, since walking away from his early fame as a child actor, since deciding that his future lay in teaching what he knew, what he'd learned from Ip Man, what he'd discovered through countless hours of experimentation, refinement, rejection of tradition when tradition proved inadequate. He'd been building something here, a reputation, a following, a vision of martial arts freed from the rigid constraints of classical forms adapted to the brutal reality of actual combat. He called it Jeet Kune Do, though the name was still forming in his mind, still crystallizing from abstract principle into concrete philosophy. 3 days ago, that vision had been tested. 3 days ago, he'd faced a man whose name he would never speak publicly. The memory sits heavy in his chest as he looks at the faces of these 15 witnesses. He can still feel the ache in his ribs, the soreness in his jaw, the deeper exhaustion that comes from 8 minutes of continuous combat. 8 minutes doesn't sound like long. 8 minutes is an eternity when 2 trained fighters are trying to hurt each other. He draws a breath. "Thank you for coming," he says. His voice carries easily across the space, accented but clear, each word carefully chosen. English is still his third language after Cantonese and Mandarin, but he's worked hard to master it. Communication is a weapon too. What I'm about to tell you, I ask you to keep between us. Not as a secret, but as a private thing. A personal thing. The 15 men lean forward slightly. The journalist pulls out a notepad, then hesitates, uncertain whether he should be recording this. Bruce notices. "No writing," he says gently. "Just listening." The notepad disappears. 3 days ago, Bruce continues, I fought a man, a Chinese martial artist from San Francisco, a practitioner of Kung Fu trained in traditional systems, very skilled. He came here with others from his school. They challenged my right to teach non-Chinese students. Several of the witnesses stiffen. They know this story, or versions of it. The traditional Chinese martial arts community has been increasingly hostile to Bruce's openness, his willingness to teach anyone regardless of race or background. In their view, he's betraying cultural secrets, diluting sacred traditions by sharing them with outsiders. They said I must stop teaching or face challenge, Bruce says. So I accepted challenge. He pauses. His jaw tightens. This is the hard part. I won, he says, but barely. The words land in the room like stones dropping into still water. Ripples of surprise pass through the witnesses. Several exchange glances. Bruce Lee barely winning. The man they've seen move with supernatural speed, whose demonstrations of power seem almost theatrical in their precision. 8 minutes, Bruce continues. His hands gesture as he speaks, tracing the shape of his memory in the air. 8 minutes of continuous fighting, no rounds, no breaks, no referee. Just 2 men and the question of who would stop first. He walks toward the heavy bag in the corner, places his palm against its worn surface. I used every technique I knew: straight punches, hook kicks, trapping hands, sweeping, grappling. Everything Ip Man taught me. Everything I'd developed on my own. And this man, he was tough. Very tough. Traditional stance, classical techniques, but he'd trained those techniques for 30 years. 30 years of doing the same movements until they were perfect, until they were automatic. Bruce's fingers curl into a fist against the bag. I hit him many, many times. Shots that should have finished the fight, but he kept coming, and he hit me too. Not as often, but hard, very hard. One of the students, a young man named Jerry who's been with Bruce since Seattle, speaks up. "But you won, Sifu. You made him give up." Bruce turns to face him. His expression is complex, pride mixed with something darker, something that looks almost like shame. "Yes, I made him stop." After 8 minutes, he couldn't continue. His breathing was too hard. His legs were weak. He acknowledged defeat. "Then why—" Jerry begins, but Bruce raises a hand. "Let me finish." The room falls silent again. After the fight, Bruce says, after the man acknowledged he could not continue, I stood there, breathing hard, hurting. And I looked at him. This man who had come to challenge me, who represented everything I was fighting against, all the closed-minded tradition and cultural prejudice. And I realized something. He walks back to the center of the room, to the exact spot where he'd been standing when they all arrived. His movements are slower now, less fluid. The exhaustion of the story is entering his body, making him remember how it felt. I realized I was not as good as I thought I was. The words hang in the air. 8 minutes, Bruce repeats. Against one man using techniques that are 50, 100 years old. Techniques I've been saying are obsolete, inefficient, too rigid for real combat. And it took me 8 minutes to defeat him. 8 minutes where I used every advantage I had: speed, youth, innovation, adaptability, and I barely won. His voice grows quieter, more intense. If this fight had happened in the street, I might be dead. If he had a friend, I would definitely be dead. Because after 8 minutes, I was too tired. Too tired to fight another person, too tired to run. I had won, but I had used everything to win. There was nothing left. The professor, a thin man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses, speaks carefully. "Bruce, you're being too hard on yourself. You were fighting a master of a traditional system." "Yes," Bruce interrupts. "Exactly. I was fighting what I claimed was obsolete, and I almost lost." He begins to pace, energy returning to his movements as the core of his realization takes hold. "This is why I asked you here. Because I need to tell you what I learned. What this man, this opponent, this teacher showed me through our fight." He stops pacing, looks at each witness in turn. "I learned that my conditioning is not good enough. 8 minutes. A real fight might last longer. I need to be able to fight for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I need to train like a boxer trains: rounds, endurance, cardiovascular capacity. Traditional martial arts don't train this way. They practice forms, techniques, but not the sustained intensity of real combat." He ticks off points on his fingers. "I learned that my techniques, while fast, are not efficient enough. I threw too many strikes that didn't finish the fight. Every movement must have maximum effect. No wasted motion, no decorative techniques. Everything must work." Another finger. "I learned that I need to study other systems more deeply. Not just Chinese martial arts, boxing, wrestling, fencing. Any system that has proven effective in real combat. I cannot be closed-minded while preaching open-mindedness." Another finger. "I learned that I need to test myself more, not in demonstrations, not in controlled sparring, but in real challenge where losing has consequences, where my ego is at risk. This is how you grow." He lowers his hand. His voice softens. "And I learned that my opponent, this traditional martial artist I had dismissed as stuck in the past, had something I lacked. Something I need to develop." "What?" asked the journalist, forgetting himself in his fascination. Bruce's expression becomes almost tender. After the fight, when his breathing calmed, when he could stand without swaying, this man came to me. He bowed, and he said, You have defeated me fairly. I was wrong to challenge your right to teach. You have proven your skill. Then he left. Bruce's eyes glistened slightly. I did not prove my skill, he proved his character. He came to my school, challenged me based on principle. Wrong principle, prejudiced principle, but principle he believed in. And when he lost, he admitted it with grace. No excuses, no bitterness, just acknowledgement and dignity. He bows his head for a moment, overcome by the memory. I thanked him. I said, thank you for this fight. Thank you for showing me my weaknesses. Thank you for teaching me. He looked confused. He said, I lost. I taught you nothing. But I told him, you taught me everything. You taught me I still have much to learn. The room is utterly silent now. Even the building itself seems to be holding its breath. So I asked him, Bruce continues, voice barely above a whisper, to never speak of this fight. Not to protect my reputation, but to honor what I learned. This fight is not a story about Bruce Lee defeating a challenger. It is a story about Bruce Lee discovering how much he doesn't know. He looks up, meeting the eyes of his witnesses again. And I'm asking you, these 15 people who I trust, who I respect, to also keep this private. Not as a secret, but as a sacred thing. This fight changed me. It will change everything about how I train, how I teach, how I think about martial arts. And I want that change to happen quietly in the work itself, not in public stories about my defeat or victory. Jerry, the young student, asks the question that several others are clearly thinking. Sifu, if this fight taught you so much, why hide it? Isn't honesty about our limitations part of what you teach? Bruce smiles, and for the first time since beginning this speech, the smile reaches his eyes. I'm not hiding it. I'm telling you. 15 people who represent different parts of my life, my work, my community. You will see the changes this fight creates. You will see me train harder, longer, more scientifically. You will see me seek out new teachers, new methods. You will see me become more humble about what I know and more hungry about what I don't. He spreads his hands, but if I make this fight public, if newspapers write about it, if martial arts schools gossip about it, then the story becomes the thing. The story becomes Bruce Lee nearly lost, or Bruce Lee barely won, or Bruce Lee fought in secret. And the truth, the actual truth of what this fight means, gets buried under narratives about pride and reputation and who's the toughest. The professor nods slowly. You're protecting the lesson, not the ego. Yes, Bruce says. Exactly, yes. The lesson is too valuable to become entertainment. He walks to the edge of the circle of witnesses, placing his hand on Jerry's shoulder. You will see me change. You will see new techniques, new training methods, new philosophy. When people ask you why, and they will ask, tell them, Bruce Lee is always evolving. Tell them he's obsessed with improvement. But don't tell them about the fight. Let the changes speak for themselves. The journalist raises his hand slightly like a schoolboy seeking permission. Bruce nods at him. If I may ask, the journalist says carefully, what will you do differently, specifically? Bruce's expression becomes animated, excited. This is the part that energizes him, not the past failure, but the future possibility. Everything. I will study boxing extensively, footwork, angles, conditioning. I will study fencing, distance control, timing. I will study wrestling, grappling, positional dominance. I will read books on biomechanics, kinesiology, physics of force generation. He begins counting on his fingers again, but this time the gesture is expansive, enthusiastic. I will develop training equipment that doesn't exist yet, things that let me practice full power, full speed without partners. I will time myself, measure myself, track my progress scientifically. I will spar with boxers, wrestlers, judoka, anyone who can expose weaknesses in my system. His voice rises with passion, and most importantly, I will teach my students to do the same. I will teach them that martial arts is not about preserving tradition. It is about honest self-examination, about testing yourself against reality and accepting what reality teaches you. Even when, especially when, that lesson is humbling. He stops, chest rising and falling with the intensity of his vision. This fight, this 8-minute war that I barely won, is the greatest gift anyone has given me in years because it showed me that I was becoming what I hate, someone who believes their own mythology, who thinks they have all the answers. The businessman, a stocky man in his 40s who'd been standing near the back, speaks up. Bruce, I understand keeping this private, but what about the other man, the one you fought? You said he agreed not to speak of it, but what if he does? What if his school talks? Bruce's expression becomes serious again. That is his choice. I asked him as a courtesy to honor what we both experienced. If he chooses to speak, that's his right. This is why I'm telling you not to ask you to lie if someone asks directly, but to ask you not to volunteer the story. If rumors spread, if people question you, tell them to ask me. Directly, I will handle it. And what will you tell them? The businessman presses. The truth, Bruce says simply, that I fought a very skilled opponent, that the fight taught me valuable lessons, and that I'm grateful for the experience. But I won't make it dramatic. I won't make it a story. Stories are for entertainment. This is education. The afternoon light has shifted, the gold pools on the floor stretching longer, dimmer. Bruce realizes they've been standing here for nearly an hour. These 15 witnesses have listened to his confession, his analysis, his request with patience and respect. Is there anything else? He asks. Questions? Concerns? The professor speaks again. Will you continue teaching non-Chinese students? Yes, Bruce says without hesitation. That fight was supposed to make me stop. Instead, it convinced me I'm right. Martial arts doesn't belong to one culture, one tradition, one system. It belongs to anyone willing to honestly examine what works and what doesn't. My opponent fought for tradition, I fight for truth. I may have barely won this time, but that's because I wasn't seeking truth hard enough. Now I will. Jerry asks, will we train harder now? Bruce laughs, and the sound breaks the tension that's been building in the room. Much harder. You will hate me for a while, then you will thank me. Like you thanked your opponent, Jerry says quietly. Yes, Bruce agrees. Exactly like that. He bows to the assembled witnesses, a formal gesture of respect and gratitude. Thank you for listening. Thank you for agreeing to keep this between us. And thank you for being willing to see what comes next. I promise you it will be worth it. The 15 witnesses bow in return. Slowly they begin to disperse, drifting toward the door in small groups, speaking in hushed tones among themselves. Some shake Bruce's hand as they leave. Others simply nod, understanding that words are insufficient for what they've just shared. When the last of them has gone, Bruce stands alone again in the center of the training hall. The same position where he started. But everything has changed. He walks to the heavy bag, positions himself, and begins to strike. Straight punches. Over and over, each one technically perfect, but he's not focused on perfection. He's focused on efficiency, on power-to-energy ratio, on sustainability. How many punches can he throw before exhaustion sets in? How much force can he generate with minimal motion? How can he hit harder while staying relaxed? These are his new questions. 8 minutes. It had taken 8 minutes to defeat one man. Next time, and there would always be a next time because challenges don't stop coming, it would take less. Not because he wanted to prove anything to anyone else, but because he'd proven something to himself he wasn't finished becoming. The heavy bag swings under his strikes, the chain creaking rhythmically. Sweat begins to form on his forehead, his neck, his arms. He doesn't stop. This is the new training. Sustained intensity, cardiovascular capacity, building the engine that ran out of fuel after 8 minutes. In the years that follow, those 15 witnesses will see Bruce transform. They'll watch him spend hours hitting focus mitts with Ted Wong, his boxing training partner, developing punches that travel 3 inches and generate explosive force. They'll see him study film of Muhammad Ali, borrowing footwork principles and adapting them to his own style. They'll see him install a heavy bag filled with steel instead of sand, then train on it until his knuckles bleed. They'll see him become obsessed with efficiency, strip away flourishes, eliminate techniques that look impressive but don't work under pressure, reduce complex movements to their simplest effective form. They'll see him develop the 1-inch punch not as a party trick, but as the ultimate expression of power without wasted motion. They'll see him build equipment that doesn't exist in any martial arts school. Wooden dummies with different arm positions, striking pads mounted on springs, resistance machines he designs himself. They'll see him fill notebooks with biomechanical calculations, angles of attack, optimal force vectors. They'll see him spar with Jean Lebel, a judoka and wrestler, and willingly tap out repeatedly to learn ground fighting. They'll see him work with Dan Inosanto, absorbing knife fighting from Filipino martial arts. They'll see him train with Chuck Norris, studying the effectiveness of karate techniques in full contact competition. They'll see him become less Bruce Lee, the mythological martial artist, and more Bruce Lee, the dedicated researcher of combat effectiveness. But most importantly, they'll see him teach this hunger for truth to his students. He'll tell them about the fight. Not the details, not the opponent's name, but the lesson. I thought I was good, he'll say. Then I fought someone who showed me I was only beginning to be good. That is the greatest gift. To be shown your limits so you can exceed them. Some of his students will understand immediately. Others will take years to internalize it. But all of them will remember the intensity in his eyes when he speaks about being humbled, being tested, being forced to confront the gap between your self-perception and reality. None of the 15 witnesses will break his confidence. The journalist will write about Bruce's philosophy, his training methods, his innovations, but never about the 8-minute fight. Jerry will train under Bruce for another 6 years, absorbing the evolution that stems from that afternoon, but he'll never tell the story to his own students. The professor will incorporate Bruce's philosophy into his lectures about pragmatism and truth-seeking, but the fight itself will remain private. The businessman will occasionally ask Bruce how his training is going, and Bruce will smile and say, "Better. Always better. Still not good enough. Maybe never good enough. That's what makes it interesting." And the opponent? The traditional kung fu master who challenged Bruce's right to teach? He keeps his word too. His school will quietly stop questioning Bruce's choices. Years later, after Bruce has become internationally famous, that man will watch Enter the Dragon in a San Francisco theater. He'll see Bruce move with a speed and efficiency that make their 8-minute fight look like ancient history. He'll recognize techniques that existed in embryonic form during their battle, now refined to supernatural precision. After the movie, someone will ask him, "Did you know Bruce Lee? Did you ever see him fight?" And he'll smile and say, "I saw him train once. Very dedicated, very humble. He understood that martial arts is a lifetime journey. Nothing more, because some lessons are too valuable to become entertainment. Some moments are too sacred to become stories." The fight lasted 8 minutes. The learning lasted a lifetime. Standing in the empty training hall, Bruce finally stops hitting the heavy bag. His arms are burning. His breath comes in controlled gasps. Sweat drips from his chin onto the wooden floor. 8 minutes felt different now. 8 minutes felt like nothing and everything simultaneously. He bows to the bag, thanking it for absorbing his strikes, for being the opponent that never defeats him and never lets him rest. Then he heads to the small office at the back of the school, where his notebooks wait. There's work to do. There's always work to do. Because the fight taught him the most important lesson of all: winning isn't the goal. Evolution is. And evolution requires honesty about where you are so you can see where you need to go. He opens his notebook to a fresh page. At the top he writes, "Research boxing conditioning methods. Contact Jean Lebel Ray, grappling fundamentals. Design new training protocol, endurance focus." Then he pauses, pen hovering over paper. He adds one more line. "Remember, losing is a gift if you're wise enough to receive it. Barely winning is an even greater gift because it shows you what losing looks like from 1 inch away." He sets down the pen. Outside, Oakland continues its afternoon business. Cars passing, people walking, the world moving forward without knowing that something significant has happened in this small training hall. But Bruce knows. The 15 witnesses know. And somewhere in San Francisco, a traditional kung fu master knows. That's enough. The rest will show itself through the work, through the thousands of hours of training that will flow from this 8-minute fight, through the philosophy that will crystallize around this moment of humbling, through the films that will eventually share his evolution with millions of people who'll never know where it started. In a private training hall. with 15 witnesses, and a request to keep sacred what was meant to teach, not to entertain. Bruce Lee lost a match that afternoon, lost the match against his own assumptions, his own limitations, his own belief that he'd already arrived at mastery. And then he thanked the man who delivered that loss, because real teachers appear in unexpected forms and real lessons often hurt before they heal. Outside, the sun continues its descent toward the San Francisco Bay. Inside, Bruce returns to the training floor, assumes a fighting stance, and begins again. 8 minutes. Next time, 5, then 3, then however long it needs to take to defend himself, his students, and the truth he's pursuing. The work has no endpoint. That's what makes it worthy of a lifetime. He throws another punch, then another, then 1,000 more. The heavy bag swings, the chain creaks, sweat falls, and somewhere in that rhythm, Bruce Lee disappears and becomes the principle he's chasing, the principle that strength lies in acknowledging weakness, that victory lies in examining defeat, that mastery begins with accepting you'll never arrive at mastery's end. The 15 witnesses carry this secret forward into the decades that follow. Some live to see Bruce become an international icon. Some pass before his tragic early death at age 32. But all of them remember the afternoon when a young martial artist stood before them and chose truth over mythology, growth over ego, private evolution over public narrative. They remember. They honor the request. They keep the lesson alive by never reducing it to gossip or story. And in keeping it private, they help Bruce Lee become exactly what he was pursuing that afternoon. Not a legend built on perfect victories, but a genuine martial artist built on honest examination, continuous evolution, and the humble recognition that every opponent is a teacher, every challenge is an opportunity, and every moment of weakness is a doorway to future strength, if you're brave enough to walk through it. 8 minutes. A lifetime. The same thing, seen from different angles. Bruce understood this now. Thanks to a fight he barely won and 15 people who agreed to let the lesson remain more important than the story. The evening settles over Oakland. The training hall grows darker. And Bruce keeps working because that's what warriors do. They thank their teachers, honor their lessons, and return to the only opponent that truly matters. The person they were yesterday who must be defeated again today and tomorrow and every day after. Until there are no more days. Until the work itself becomes the victory. 8 minutes taught him this. 15 witnesses held this truth. And we, hearing this story now, must ask ourselves, who in our lives has delivered hard truths we needed? Who has defeated us in ways that taught us more than winning ever could? And when we win, when we're proven right, when we defeat our opponents, do we destroy them or build them back up? Do we use our victories to prove superiority or to demonstrate the grace that true strength makes possible? Bruce Lee chose grace. He chose teaching. He chose evolution. What will you choose?